I'm a bit on the run today, but I wanted to make sure to be able to share with you a thought in honor of this upcoming Shabbos. The Torah tells us about many of the halachos related to war. And the Torah tells us that there are certain people who should not go out and fight. And they're listed, they're delineated. And one of them is Miho Isha Yarei V'Rach HaLevav, the person who is scared. Why is the person scared? We would assume the person is scared because war is scary. There's bloodshed. You may have to kill, or you may be killed. But that's not what Chazal tell us. Chazal tell us that the person who is Yoreh, the person who is scared and needs to come back, Rabbi Yossi Agli tells us in the Gemara Sota on Daf Mem Daled, is that he's scared me averos shebiyado, that his sins are going to come up against him at this time of judgment, at this time of din. What sins are we talking about? Presumably terrible things. But that's not what the Gemara tells us. The Gemara tells us that the person who is scared is because of the Avero Shebiyado, is the Avera of having Soch bein Tefillah L'Tefillah, having spoken between one Tefillah and the next Tefillah. What's that talking about? So Rashi explains to us that the singular of Tefillin is Tefillah. And the person who speaks between the Tefillin Shel Yad and the Tefillin Shel Rosh is the person who needs to return back. That's the Avera Shebiyado. What's the Avera? So we paskin that although the Tefillin Shel Rosh and the Tefillin Shel Yad are two separate mitzvos, we make the bracha on the Tefillin Shel Yad also goes on the Tefillin Shel Rosh. And therefore a person who speaks in between is gorim, causes a bracha she'ena tzricha, not a bracha of atala, but to make another bracha on the Tefillin Shel Rosh. That's the Avera Shebiyado. That's the high level of the people that we are talking about. But it's interesting that Torah quotes an opinion that Asach bein Tefillah interprets that Tefillah in the simple sense, in terms of our prayer, that the person who is Sach between Yishtabach and Yotzer, that at the point when you're no longer supposed to speak in davening, the person speaks. That's enough. That's an Avera, which is the Tefillah, which is an Avera for which one has to go back. That's the seriousness with which the Gemara teaches the tefillos that we have and showing a proper respect. And it's a challenge, and we all know that it's a challenge. And maybe there's a connection between the two. Maybe the undermining lying cause of the reason sometimes that we speak, being tefillah between different parts of davening, is because of the issue of hasach bein tefillah between the tefillin shel yad and the tefillin shel rosh. The tefillin shel yad represents our actions. It's on our hand. The tefillin shel rosh is on our moach, is on our mind. And sometimes there's a disconnect between our minds and our heart, and our hands, between our actions and our thoughts. And when we have that disconnect, then we do things that aren't necessarily rational, that we don't understand. And we could truly understand the power of tefillah. And that this is my moment, this is my opportunity to talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to have a conversation. And yet somehow I can be distracted. And logically it doesn't make sense, but when I try to put it into action, it's that much more difficult. And that's what we need to work on, trying to figure out how to join the two together. How to avoid Sach bein Tefillah. Perhaps one of the keys to appreciating our tefillah more is to figure out how to actualize it. How to first appreciate it in our minds. Understand the power of our tefillah. That our tefillos can change worlds. That our tefillos can change us. And that there are always going to be people around us who need those moments of tefillah and are distracted by things that we might say. But then we have to take a step further and figure out a game plan to actualize it. How do we make sure that we're not sach, that we're not distracted, but doing that the plan is of not to speak, of to concentrate on tefillah and to actualize it. And that's the challenge of this mandate that the Torah has of making sure that we're not Yarei V'Rach HaLevav, that we can stand confidently. And perhaps Elul is the time we're going to be spending a lot of time B'ezras Hashem and Shul together. And those tefillos are so desperately needed and so powerful. And maybe that's what we can try to be mechazik. We could try and figure out how to make sure that we don't end up being sach, bein tefillah tefillah, between different parts of davening, be'emtza tefillah, or during davening, by making sure that we are not sach bein tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel rosh, that our minds and our minds and our hands, our actions, are one and the same, are working together to bring us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.